5:40.
It has to be worth 5.
Yeah, do you do 10s? I sometimes do 10s on Mondays and Tuesdays.
Most of them. Whatever.
I know, mine
about 6:30, so if you're at 6, you can talk.
What's that?
We're running until about 6:30, so. It's
If
not
that
six,
is,
so if we don't run out short, I'm
Yeah, I
gonna,
mean, it's not correct houses. So, yeah. Do you want to get started?
sure.
Okay. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Scott Marshall. I'm the project architect for the bond work that was hired by the school district. Derek Howard is the owner of the CD Construction. There's the CMGC. I think he thinks the meeting is at 6 instead of 5, so he'll probably be along shortly. It's my understanding that communication from the school district and from the design team hasn't been as good as it could have been. It's important to understand that I work for the school district, and my basic intent is to serve you guys the best that I can. And so I was going along and conveying the information to you guys as I was instructed to. Now, I've been asked to basically go back a little bit, fill in the gaps and walk through everything so that you guys know where we're at and what we're doing. So, I put this, does everybody have one of these? Okay. So I put this together. It's basically a comprehensive school district committee report. And it starts at the bond pre-design project alignment and completed to date. So I want to kind of make this a little basic so everybody understands the process by which the construction, design, everything moving forward works. So once the bond was voted for, there was a 2 or 3 week wait that normally there isn't, because they had to validate the count because they were so close together. As far as the winning, and it was a close race, so they had to go and verify that. So we started, and there was Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that stuff. So we started officially really rolling and ramping up on looking at programming and stuff in January. Okay. So right now to date, the architect and design team has been selected. The design team consists of myself, mechanical engineer, structural engineer, electrical engineer. Those all fall under my purview. So they're like my subcontractors. Okay. CMGC has been selected. They're basically the CMGC is a contractor who is brought in early on to analyze basically the design drawings as we move forward, offer ways to save money, and then once things start, they put the project out to bid and hire subcontractors, gather the bids together, and then act in a manner to basically run the schedule and get the project complete. So the CMGC, the architect, and the school district, it's like a three-legged stool. They all kind of work together. That's what holds us there. There is some engineering that was done before we can really get rolling and understanding exactly all the ins and outs of the building and the site. A topographical survey was completed of the site that shows kind of the grades and how the ground is, what the slopes are. A geotechnical report was completed, which basically tells us what the soil bearing capacity is, the drainage rate, this potential seismic liquefaction, everything that we need to know from a structural component for new construction. A pre-construction hazardous materials assessment was completed. That's an engineer that comes out, looks at all the areas that we're going to be touching during the construction, remodel, repurposing, provides a report for hazardous materials so that we know that they're there before we get started, so we can get debated and keep everybody safe. We have a materials testing and special inspector contracted with, so that when construction does start, we can adhere to code. Code requires that we have a third-party inspector inspecting crucial structural components to make sure that health, life, and safety aspect is covered. So those are all in place. So where we sit now as far as our bond projects and our jurisdictional approval. Benton County is the jurisdiction who issues all the permitting for construction. Right now, there are basically 3 different things that we need to do in order to get our permits. The first one is conditional use approval. The school was here before zoning was created. The county has basically classified the school as a village residential. So any work that we do on the outside, as far as additions or anything like that, requires a conditional use permit. Okay. Even though it has been serving for that use all this time, we still need to follow the law and go through the steps. So the conditional use permit has been applied for. And when we did it, we included all of the potential bond work and everything, and are doing it in one basically swap. So we only have to do it one time. So that application is going through. We'll have bond project conditional use approval on 3/28. That's because there's a time, there's a duration from when you submit it to, so you can get public comment, so those sorts of things. So that's when they said that they'll be done with it. They also agreed. I went and talked to the county for a couple hours here prior to submitting. Typically, the conditional use application and the process has to happen prior to going through plans and specifications for building permitting. They've agreed to do them concurrently. Okay. So they've also agreed to do the floodplain development permit concurrently as well. So the next thing is the floodplain development permit. The back half of the school is right on the edge of the floodplain. Benton County's law, basically, the way that they do it is anything within 50 feet of the edge of the floodplain per FEMA map, you have to do a floodplain permit. We have I've talked to the civil engineers. They've given us basically floodplain elevation certificates. They've been filed. The design of those buildings are designed so that there's no mechanical units on the ground, and so that the finished floor is above what the floodplain is. So they have all that information. Those permits are being processed, and they've been taken, and they're ready for being applied to the building permits. So typically there's 4 permits that you have to get. The first one's the structural permit, and that has to do with Oregon Special Code requirements, health, life, safety, and structural. Then electrical, mechanical, and plumbing permits have to do with those specific trades. Typically, the structural permit gets applied for and gets approved. Then once the subcontractors are hired, they go through and run the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing permits. The county's agreed to run them all concurrently, even though we don't have a contractor selected because our bids aren't done yet. So once those subcontractors are picked, whomever the contractor is for those specific trades will fill their name in, they'll have a permit, and we'll be ready to go. Okay. The projects that are in for permitting right now is the panel hallway and new classroom building. The projects that are currently project that is currently out, that has been out for the longest amount of time, is the power upgrade to the building. Consumers Power has the engineer drawings. We sent them to them the first week of January. I've asked them for an update several times. They're doing the engineering still, and I haven't heard anything from them. But I've been every couple weeks, so that's in process. That's one of the first steps that we can do is get that going, because it has the longest lead time things, which is the potentially the transformer that are going. The panel room hallway project is a room that is going to house the new panels, so that we can do the power upgrade, get all the infrastructure in place, and then once that's all complete and the new power service is in, we can basically flip over all of the old service into the new service, and the school will only be down for a day or two, as opposed to going through and utilizing the same route. Okay. I understand that the seismic project, there's been some confusion on how that works, so I'll go through that. The seismic project is a grant, and it basically is funded through a different funding source than the bond. The Oregon Department of Education gives the school district a grant to do a study. The study's been done. That study was approved. And then you apply for the seismic grant through the Oregon Business Association. It's a different funding source. And they go through those reports, and then they take the people that are qualified until the money runs out. And then it's just a grant for you guys will get 2.5 around $2.5 million. It can only be used for seismic work. If there's overlap on bond work that's happening at the same time as a seismic project, because lots of times they just happen to happen at the same time, the seismic project will pay for specific things that are required to do the seismic project. And some of those things may be part of the bond project. So there could be a cost savings potential. There's a little bit of overlap in some of the work. Last year, you guys didn't get it. In actuality, I don't think any school districts got it. They went all to fire stations last year. We've applied for that again, and usually it takes them. I think they said June. No. So we've adjusted the schedule and the phasing of the project to kind of align with that. Previously, it was anticipated that we did it last year, and we didn't. So we had to do some juggling around and some modifying of something to make it so that we're not doing something in the bond and then the seismic project comes in and then rips it out and then puts it back. Okay. So it kind of runs on its own course. It's different money. It's not involved with the bond project, but those monies can be combined in an overall project, and there can be some overlap and some savings there. Okay. Are there any questions so far?
Floodplain,
Floodplain.
25, 50, 100, which one? 25-year, 50-year, 100-year?
It is the 100-year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And it
50 feet beyond that.
50 feet in ground distance.
Yes.
Beyond that. Yes. And that the floodplain line basically follows the ridge of
The
of
drop
track.
off.
Yeah, it's right where the drop off is, and it kind of creeps up and it creeps up a little bit into where the relocatable is.
Okay. The other question is a conditional use approval. Wouldn't it be more effective to just do away with that altogether and go for a zoning change for the school ground?
It would be effective in the future, but the time that it would take to do it would kind of align with what we're trying to get done.
Okay.
I did talk to them a little bit about that, and it's more of a process.
Okay.
So that's something that can be done
Going forward.
going forward.
I have a question on the seismic grant.
Sure.
I see in here that you've got the cafeteria kitchen designated that those funds would go to that. What are the projects with the seismic grant?
So I believe that I think the gymnasium is part of the report.
So is that listed on here? I may be missing it.
It may not be in here. Derek Howard was the seismic person that did that. When it gets here, we can ask him. Part of the cafeteria in there is the back wall is very seismically unstable. And it was my impression that that is part of what the improvement requirement is. We can get in the weeds with them on that.
The reason I ask is just because of the seismic grant, you could only use it for those specific items.
Right. And I think that item's listed in there, but I don't know.
Yeah, and it looks like just from the back page that really need that grant to be able to make this whole budget work.
So if we don't get the grant, there would be a seismic structural improvement on that back wall. I was just putting it in there because for the sake of saying we've adjusted the schedule so that it would align. If we were to get it, we would be doing work twice. Question.
That was my question. What happens if you don't get the seismic grant?
If we don't get the seismic grant, then we move forward, and then we don't realize some of the overlap that might happen. So cost a little bit more. But I didn't want to we don't want to throw good money after bad and say, okay, we're going to do all these things very first or at a timeline that would require us to do the work twice. That's just wasted.
So can you put in for the grant again after this?
Oh,
No, I know, if you don't get it in June, then you would really have things put on hold.
we could just continue.
You would just continue and forget the seismic grant.
Yeah, because it's not really a guaranteed thing. There is a time limit on the awesome grant funds that was received, and that's 3 years. So we don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're trying to get a bunch of work done at the very end so that we don't lose that money.
Doesn't it look like $2.5 million out of a $7 million project is rather sizable? What would come off of the total if you don't get that?
Yeah, I'll get there, I promise. Okay, so there's been conversation, and I understand. And again, I'm hearing this all third person, so forgive me if I'm not completely accurate. We have remodeled the toilet rooms, and that's all of the work that has been done. And I know that the law was passed in November, a year and 4 or 5 months ago. Okay. I want to explain that there are lots of factors that have kind of like rolled into not adhering to what the initial construction schedule and start times have been. Okay. I'm gonna try my best to kind of explain kind of the intricacies of this. So as I'm going along, if you guys have questions, just interrupt me and ask, okay? So when we started this project, everything was a little different. Some of the big contributing factors were the student population. Okay, when we started, there was 100 less kids than there are right now. And during the time that from when we started till this point, the student population kept on increasing. Okay, student population of the school is important because the school district gets funding from students. Okay, so and plus the Alcee is a great school to come to, and a lot of people want to come here, and so they want to be open and accepting of that. Okay. When you have a plan in place to make improvements to a building, the things that you consider are number of classrooms, classroom sizes, everything aligns to the number of students that you have. And so initially we said, okay, we have this many kids. Okay, this plan is going to work. It's going to accommodate everybody. Everybody's going to get a classroom, so and so. As it progressed, the priorities changed. So we had to be dynamic in changing what those priorities are. Oh, we need more classrooms because now there's more students and we need to start splitting up some grades and so on and so forth. So that was one of the factors that we were trying to dynamically change. The other factors was that from last year to this year, there's been 12% inflation on construction costs. And so we've gone through multiple iterations of certain things like the shop. We've gone through 3 or 4 different designs, done budgets on those, realized that the costs were too high, went back through, whittled things down, took things out that were wants versus needs, and came up with a plan to where, okay, this is something that it will fit in the rest of it. Yes.
When you say we, who do you mean by we?
The people that were involved with that was the school district, myself, and the construction manager, based on what the needs were from the school for the students and their wants, and from what you guys voted on. So on the ballot, there's a listing of things that were approved that everybody says, okay, yes, we agree that we'll do a bond. We were directly off of that list, trying to get the most number of things that were voted on and approved done.
So would those be considered the bond promises?
They were, when you went and voted and said yes to the bond, there was a listing of projects. And so I have that list, and I did send out what the ballot measure was. So we say promises. I don't know if that, but the promises were,
No.
That's what we're talking about. But yes.
When you say school district and construction manager, who specifically are you talking about?
Tim, Tina, myself, Mark.
And Derek is the construction manager for the construction company.
Correct. Hi, Derek. He thought it was at 6. So you want to come up here? Yeah. Okay. So the bond oversight committee that we have, that they have a certain role and responsibility. Their roles and responsibilities mainly, and if anybody wants to chime in when I'm going through this and help me clarify or we can discuss, is to ensure that the work that's being done aligns with what projects are listed in the bond measure, and they need to be updated with what the budgets are, which you guys have not been. Okay. And what the schedule is. Those are kind of basically the 3 tiers of, and then the information that you guys glean and oversight is kind of like back up to make sure that the design team so you're staying on track. And then also you have the your kind of tasked in a way to go and communicate that. Anybody want to have any questions on that? And there's
One of my big issues is that I don't think we've been getting the documentation that we need to do reform our oversight. For example, how well is the project going along? Reading this stuff, it doesn't make any sense to me. And at one time I was a PMP. So, I want a Gantt chart. I want to see progress on a regular basis. We're 55% done on this test. Yeah, I know this is a list of tasks, but it doesn't say start dates, end date, percent of progress, relationship to the critical path, any of that. Risks of delays, that kind of thing.
Sure.
No, I'm not sure we need risk of delay or anything like that, but that would help a lot, and we could go back to the original proposal and, double check that kind of thing, and we're not getting that.
Sure. So the Gantt chart is basically for anybody that wants to know, it's a construction schedule that was the critical path. So it lists what thing has to happen before the next thing can happen. And then if one of those things changes, then it basically pushes out the end of the construction. Those are typically done for when you start construction. We haven't usually started a really big project as of yet, so you will get those. Well, so that you can oversee those. And the way that the phasing works and everything, I have a graphic and on the timeline, and I will get it to you guys.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, send it to Shirley. She'll make sure we get it.
I will send it to Shirley. And so we've gone, part of the problem has been, is that has been continually in flux a little bit because we've been accommodating some of the things that have been happening to the school population. And so we've been trying to nail that down. And so that was one portion of it. And the other portion of it is I wasn't totally aware that we were being doing that, but now I am. And so I will be here at each one of the bond meetings and give you a report just like this, and we'll go through it and make it really formal.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
You mentioned on your opening statement that one of the reasons why we didn't have all the information was because you were instructed not to release that information. Can you tell me who instructed you not to release this information?
It was kind of I don't want to say one person, but we didn't know we didn't really know the answer for which we had. So I knew that our budget was this way. Like, for example, whatever the number is. Part of the reason is because when student population goes up and you guys have an online program, there is a facility, the budgets change. Okay, so it was the intent of the school district, and I don't know what the number is. I don't know how it works because it was still in flux, is that there's a capital improvements portion of the school district. And they have some money, and I don't know what that amount is. Okay. And I don't know if they know what that amount is yet because of COVID. And there's been other grants that they've gotten for improvements to the building. They're called ESSER funds. And they are earmarked for certain components, certain construction activities that improve air quality and those sorts of things. And we have a big heating and cooling portion of this. And so I wasn't involved in the minutia of all of that. So I wasn't trying to be secretive. I just didn't know the answer to that.
But nonetheless, you were instructed not to release information, right? Was that?
I was instructed because I didn't know what the number was. I didn't know if we're over budget. So we basically gone through and filtered it down as much as we can. And the discussion that was made between when we were in meetings was that, oh, we'll be able to put some money in and cover this stuff. Let's just keep on going. I don't know what that means. But
Have you ever been involved in a project like that was that big?
I've never been involved in a project like this during COVID. or the school district that's grown this much, that's the size. Typically, small town schools, and I've done quite a few of them. This population varies 1 or 2 or 3 kids every year, and it has for a long time. So that dynamic component of the student population is something that you really don't have to consider. So there's a lot of weird things that's been occurring in this school district that I haven't experienced before. And I've been doing this for 25 years. So yes, I guess is the answer to your question. We're all in, the whole COVID thing too. And, I know that's been beat to death as far as an excuse, but that's contributed a little bit as well.
We all feel that way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm personally tired of it. So I try not to say it as much as I can because it sounds like I said. Does that answer your question?
No,
Okay.
no, but that big round push, so that's good.
We'll talk, Rob.
Derek and I didn't know what the total budget number was. We were never told. Okay. I didn't want to say, this is how much we have, because I didn't know.
Yeah,
What if you know what the budget is though, because you had a bond? Forget how many extra kids were that came in. You had a general amount from the bond that was based on to start with.
Right. We knew it was above that. As you can see, the numbers.
Yeah, I see that, but it's like not even dealing with the amount of students that came in. If you just talked about the money that you've already used from the bond itself.
so this is a lot more complicated than just a bond. You've got the bond, you've got the awesome grant, you've got the possibility of the seismic, you've got the inflation that's dragging us the other direction. And it's been real difficult for these guys to work with them. And on top of that, there were other factors that we have differences of opinion about. So, he's actually doing a pretty good job of what he has.
And again, I appreciate that. That's why I started saying that I'm working for the school district and I really want to stretch our money and do the best that we can for what we're doing. I'm kind of a little bit stuck holding the bag here, and I appreciate you guys not getting the pitchforks and torches out on me.
We've left it in the gym.
That's for after one.
Very reserved. There's an open door right there.
Just, I appreciate your tactfulness and professionalism, but if I'm reading you correctly, it sounds like what you're basically saying is you didn't have the information either. You were not given a real clear indication of what your funds were and what your scope was. Is that correct?
We do a little bit to that.
Yeah, we knew what the scope was because that was what was voted on. The scope changed in priority because of student population and different things that were happening. But we always worked within what was voted for. The bond amount, we know because we voted on it. We know the awesome grant. It's the extra that we knew there was some. And so we were working, saying, okay, well, we need to get kind of where we're at. So we knew 3/4 of it, but the 1/4 was vacillating. And to be fair, I don't know if the school district knew where that would be because of where their funding sources were.
You ever know 100% of the information?
No.
If you didn't hear, I asked him if he ever knew 100% of the information. The answer was no. Yeah, you never do. Until the project is over.
I was just gonna second what you were saying. In the beginning, there was a dollar amount in the RFP that came out. And I forget what the total amount was. When we started peeling the layers of the onion back, we started understanding some of the confusion that went into the total dollar amount. And so Scott and myself were given X dollars in the RFP to go to it's the scope of project. And then we peeled the layers back and there were dollars that were accounted for that technically could go into that project. One of those was a seismic grant, which was don't have. What we did this year, but that was a dollar amount that was accounted for in the overall budget that technically wasn't there and technically could be used for your bond specific work. So I think there was some confusion in that process as well.
In retrospect, I should have, regarding that, I should have been more diligent in trying to have district understand that better. I understand how that works. I've done several projects like that. I know how the grants work. But it might have gotten lost in translation in one way or another. So, but moving forward on that, Eric's a structural engineer as well. He's the one that did the seismic analysis, did a PE, did the report and made the submission. So we have a very understanding how it works. So, did that answer your question?
But thank you.
I'm doing the best I can. Okay, so the second page is basically all the projects, and it gives an update of where we're at. So you don't have to go through all of these, but when one thing changes, it changes everything else downstream. Okay. Have a map. Yes.
Can I speak up just a little bit? There's like something running over here. It's making it almost so I can't hear you.
Okay. If you
Just
want
a
to.
little bit. Well, I'm gonna have to get up and leave in a few, so I don't want to go trumpet through the meeting
Okay.
twice.
All right.
Just a shade. Okay. Come up there.
Okay, so in a nutshell, basically where we are at is we have two phases of the project that are in for permitting and are in pre-bid. Derek's putting together the bid packages, get everything ready to go out. The vocational building will be completed and submitted next week. Okay, those are vocational building, classroom for the middle school, 3 classroom addition, and then the hallway and the panel room, which will house the new electrical service. Okay. On this list, everything that has double spaces, all cascade from one thing to the other. Okay, so they're dynamic in nature, and I tried to, and I'll bring. It's a complicated thing. I will bring a map at our next bond meeting that has a plan, and it'll show you kind of how we're jumping things around. Okay. So the next thing that's coming down the pipe is wrapping up the HVAC upgrades for the building. We can't get that going until the electrical service is in, because right now we're over 100% capacity with the service. And if we get rid of our oil boilers and replace them with electric, we're going to be in trouble. Okay. So that's the next thing. The service we do have a lot of that engineering done already, because we had to figure out how much power we needed. Okay. So figure our service, it's 2,000 amp service. So after the heating and cooling stuff is set, then that's when we would demolish the boiler. We don't want to heat. Then after that, we would do the construction, connect the panel hallway to where the existing wood shop is, which will eventually be where the cafeteria is going to be. Once the boiler room's demolished, that's where the kitchen's going to be. And then after kitchen's online, then where the kitchen is now, that will be repurposed into a classroom. That makes sense. So you can see how everything kind of moves around. Everything at the bottom that are single, that are put together in a group, are things that can run independent of everything above it. So we're going to remodel the locker rooms. That can be done really anytime, considering what the above phases are. I mean, you can't do them right in the middle of football season, obviously, but this list is basically a list of what is dependent on other previous projects. Okay, the next page is, again, yes.
I can see on this list, where's the new shop?
It's at the beginning, it's the point.
Where the softball field was.
No, where is it at as far as being,
Oh,
It's gonna be put in for bidding and permitting next week.
why is it not on?
Pardon?
It's not on this list. Is it? Do I not see it?
It's on the front page in the building planning. Building permits.
No, it's not spelled out though in this list.
On the list because I missed it. It is on the front. I just didn't populate the,
So where is that at?
it's going to be drawing 99% done, waiting for some mechanical final. And it will be put into Benton County for permitting and bidding Thursday. Apologize for that.
That goes in line with the new classroom building schedule. 317.
That one was, yes, 317 is when the DOC, I cut and pasted over the top of it is what happened. It's so complicated, I can't even keep it. Okay, the last page, there's been discussion about, okay, well, this district's having, spending money and, but we're not seeing anything being done. Okay, so that's what the funding is. Construction cost to date, $237,557 for the toilet rooms. Soft cost to date, I list all of the survey, the geotechnical, the hazardous materials survey, printing and shipping. And then I list architectural and structural engineering, electrical engineering, heating and plumbing, engineering, and total services. So this is a open book on from the design team what we've been doing for the past year. Yes.
This is probably as a woman noticing this, but in the bathrooms, they're all completed and finalized. And they're done, right? There's like a glaring thing to me. Like
Okay.
for that amount, it should be like perfect in my eyes. And I noticed something right off the bat that actually it's just a little thing, but it's like it's right there. Like how come it? I can show you, but I don't understand why that is like that. Why it's not.
What is it?
It's I'll show you. It's not a huge thing, but it's like I would just think it would be perfect like the rest of it. It's like it's a divot. It shouldn't be there.
In the concrete.
It's not
On the
the
floors.
Yeah. It doesn't match up. Just a question.
So
We can take a look at it, see what it is.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. It's just a small little, it's like if you were building a house, like it would be something that I would go fix that. Before I'm gonna sign off on that, you fix that.
one of the hurdles with the remodeling bathrooms was that the sewer backs up because there's a lift station right behind that all the city sewer goes through. when the power goes out, it backs up into the school. And it goes, and so that's one problem. So the power upgrade, we're gonna be putting a generator that will address that so that it will help, so that doesn't happen. when the power
This
goes out.
isn't by the toilets at all.
I'm telling you this so I can tell you
Okay.
that, okay? What used to happen is it would come in up through the drain and the toilet, the floors were flat. So it would run out and go on into the school. And then Keenan had to go and push it all back, right? So one of the design criteria that we did is now the floor slopes. So we went in and we put a very nice sloped, four-way sloping floor and repositioned the drains. It's a very specific product that we did in order to do that. So when you walk up into bathrooms, you notice it kind of slopes up ever so slightly, and so that we can get the drop that we needed, not have to rip everything out. So
That's not what I'm talking about.
I know the floor is actually a built-up system from nothing slope, and probably that dividend there was a process of doing that.
I'll just, if I could just show you later.
Sure.
Because this
Yeah.
isn't making any, this doesn't really have to do with what I'm talking.
Okay. Yes, we can. We got the contractor here too. We know what happened. Okay, so full disclosure, this is where all the bond monies that have been spent. Okay, so the last page is the bond project budget. That the estimates are, and it has an inflation escalation and additional in there. You can see that the total is $7.8 million. So we have understanding that there's not adequate money to cover all of the projects that we have listed. That went into the scheduling of the ordering of the projects as well. So things that are being done now. First thing was the power upgrade. That's an important thing. That needed to happen regardless of whether or not anything else happens because it's over capacity. That would include the panel. That would include the hallway because it has a panel room in it. And that's where the service is going to go. The next thing was the classrooms because there's a huge, 100 people, 100 kids in addition to when we started, and the classroom space is short. The DOC building, it's going up because anticipation for relocation of cafeteria. So that function goes out to the DOC building. The old shop will be used for the new package. So that's the order, and we will, if we need to, and we are working towards that, arrange things, and maybe some of the stuff will drop off the list that we won't be able to afford. But there's a couple unknowns as far as what ESSER money can be used for, and those other additional funds. And we will keep the bond committee apprised of everything that's going on and exactly what the approach is, so everybody's aware from here on out. Yes.
Who prepared the cost estimates and when were they prepared? Since it relates to inflation.
So the cost estimate was done by myself. And it was done at the end of when we completed the facilities assessment grant for the report. Facilities assessment requires that we have a series of meetings with community and with staff of the building, and come up with a list of things that would be wanted if a bond were to pass. That's part of that report.
So the numbers are a couple of years old.
Yes.
And has the CMGC had a chance to look at these, validate them at all?
We've been working through estimates with Scott and our staff to try and figure out the best bang for the buck. And,
Do you agree with the numbers in this list?
some of them I think we're gonna be close. The EOC building, I think on Scott's right now is close to a couple $100 a square foot for that, but half of that building is essentially just covered open space. And so I think it has like 6,000 square foot footprint, 82 by 82, so 6,400. And so 3,000 of that is open space. Has mezzanine, lumber's going up, everything's going up, so I think the 1.4 million is gonna be close. But the HVAC system and electrical for that building really what major breaks in.
So when you ask the initial budgeting, you're talking about right, like before we started going through the bond campaign, or are you talking?
No, just these numbers that you're using them as the basis for going forward right now, your plan. Just because, you know, taking a look at it and without the seismic grant, it looks like with soft cost of inflation, you've only got enough to get through 1C11. And so I'm curious as to if that's all that this can accomplish with the bond and the awesome grant, if the board and everybody, if they understand that's all they may get out of this. And even a lot of the things below that, even with the seismic grant, it won't cover most of that work. It won't apply to most of that work. I'm just wondering why you're continuing design on items that very unlikely you're not going to build.
We have the next steps of design we had to do in order to figure out the overall concept. So they're all in the design development portion's done. And it's been dynamic because we've had to do it in order to figure out the different steps. Okay. The design team is not working towards doing working drawings for the kitchen as of yet, but we do have a kitchen design laid out. And we did that process so that we could make sure it could fit in that space, for example.
I'll say another spot where we've already trimmed back on budgets is the classroom addition. Over here, that classroom addition originally had a basement with really large retaining walls, and just absolutely no way. You can't do it economically and afford to do anything else. So that's an area where we said, nope, it's one story. Just if you want other stuff, you can't do it. And so we've been working with Scott to try and tweak things, slim them down, figure out the most efficient use for the spaces, and try and fit as much as you can in the budget that you have, because it's not close to covering that whole thing by any stretch.
Now, and you're right, there's, you know, the first third is what the awesome grant will, and the bond monies will cover at this point.
The what grant?
The awesome, the matching funds grant that you guys got. Okay. As everybody's aware, the old superintendent is gone. Okay, the new superintendent's here. I don't know potential. I don't know. But I don't know what if there are facilities monies that can be used. I don't know that, and so we will know more about that later. Next month, I'm assuming. I don't know. The change in guard is stopped things a little bit. Yes.
So you're not completely sure if you're going to have all the money to do everything that you want to do. And it sounds like you're doing some value engineering. Are you prioritizing? I mean, how are you doing this in terms of prioritizing the needs of the school versus what people may have wanted, or how do you do that? How are you doing that? Who's helping you out with that?
The school district.
You are doing a value engineering process.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that was the other reason why it's been a moving target. Like for example, the DOC building, we've gone through four iterations. We did a metal building, a design. We did a larger frame design. We had a wood shop and a metal shop. We cut it down to a metal shop only. We've gone through that very specifically. The projects that are out right now, the power upgrade. The power upgrade is what it is. I mean, it's electrical stuff, right? Yes.
Last time I talked to you in January, I had a lot of questions and we didn't get through everything. And, you know, I really think, and I've been waiting for this hour and somehow it got changed and I was just sitting at home and did not know that it changed. And I really think as being part of at that time, I was introductive to you as the new one of the BOCs on the committee. And so, I mean, I think, I don't know who's in charge anymore. And we didn't have much, the committee didn't have much of a choice anyway. It was all done up to Mark's standards and what Mark wanted to do. Now we have a new superintendent. Hopefully he will guide this committee better. And I think we need to reprioritize this whole thing because I think it's just way off.
So the bond committee has certain, is tasked at doing a certain thing.
Yeah, I got our little thing as to what we can do and what we can't do, which is very much. Got my little oversight committee scope of work and what our limitations are and what we can say.
Have to understand that the prioritization, the ordering, and all of that has been discussed for 18 months. There's lots of people that have been involved in doing that. If you have a different feeling of what needs to happen, I'm not sure how we would address that.
Well, I think we need to have a committee. We need to have a really fundamental committee. I mean, like, we've had so many people drop out because they've been so upset about the way this whole thing has been handled.
So when you say a different community, you're referring to design.
I'm talking about our board, the board committee, this BOC committee that which was established. I didn't get involved until just recently. And there's been so many people that have dropped out because they are just so confused, don't know where they can go, what they can do. Their input is nothing. There's no organization.
Sure, what I think I'm hearing you say is you want to see our scope of abilities change.
Yeah.
How do we go about changing the scope of abilities to have more involvement in the process? Is it an option? Where are the laws and regulations to say it's not?
Exactly, because every time I bring it up at the board meetings, Mark would always say to me, we don't have time. If you want to talk about it, Cheryl, make an appointment, come talk to me personally. I don't want to go see that man personally.
So can I make a suggestion from the public then? I think the bond committee needs to delegate somebody that reports to the board at the board meeting on what this meeting decides upon, so that you can help us prioritize where funds and things go.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that there's anybody in here that's had the ability or had the opportunity to provide those priority lists. But obviously, by looking at the numbers here, would you think, do you think it's safe to say that not 1/3 of this can be accomplished based on the numbers? Is that a fair assessment? That should have been your opening statement.
Well, now we have the option to talk to the board and say, okay, this is the information we have. where's the rest of this money coming from?
I think,
And we need to ask that, and it's okay to ask that.
so I think part of,
You just have to show up and do it.
I think part of that, sorry, just one second, part of that money thing is we've been told every meeting that there's X dollars from this fund and that fund that we can pull in to increase this budget to Z or
So we
Y.
need to find that
Yes,
number
yeah.
and find out how much
Who
that
told
number
you
is.
this?
We,
Is that the same guy that told you not to
It's the
divulge
Bush.
the rest of the information, or?
So I think you're correct. I think there needs to be some leadership within the bond oversight committee
Thank you.
that really understands the total value of the project. So that Scott, as the design agent and us as the contractor, starts saying, okay, here is the actual amount that you can't exceed. Now let's figure out what we can do with the remainder of rest of the 2/3 that we can't get to. What's most important? And is there something in the top 1/3 that maybe
It's not as important as the rest of it.
yeah, maybe the shop is too big and you want to put some funds somewhere else, or I'm just throwing something, spitballing, but yeah. And like Scott said, we've been through like 4 or 5 design iterations through this process, trying to figure out that number. Yeah.
And what's in motion now? The power upgrade and some other things, regardless of anything, had to be done. I mean, it would be on, it would be number one.
But that, wouldn't that be based on a completed design as opposed to, what ifs? I'm really struggling with this because power upgrades are dependent upon what they're gonna be used for, what the power
Yeah,
is needed.
you're right.
So designing one now and then, oops, I got 500 amps too much over here and not enough over here.
You're absolutely right. That's why we've gone through this process in order to figure out step one,
Right.
right? So,
But at the same time, you're eating up architectural fees and all the rest of this stuff to accomplish it. And somebody's got to stand up and say, oh, let's take a time out and relook at this.
so the design team fee is fixed. And it won't be any more than what the agreed amount is.
So what about every time you come here, your costs, your transfer, is that all included?
It's included in my fee.
Just not every day.
So every time you come over here from Idaho or sorry, it's all included.
It's not reimbursable.
Okay.
It's reimbursed. I say it's a reimbursable amount for my own bookkeeping, but you aren't paying extra for it.
And how's the permits coming on?
Missed that part.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I thought it was 6 o'clock.
You know what?
Nobody informed me.
Okay, so the first 2 pages are for permitting, as well as the floodplain application and the conditional use application.
We've held off on sending all packages out to bid because we don't want to get bid for the hallway. And then 2 weeks later, get a bid for classrooms, and then 3 weeks later, get a bid for the VSC. So we haven't sent anything out to bid because we want one package to get the best deal. Otherwise, we get inflated costs for the hallway, get a contractor, mobilize, come in for a little bit of work, demobilize, and then mobilize again for another work. And so financially, it doesn't make sense to go out individually. So that's part of the process where we haven't sent that whole package out, just as financially responsible.
Yes.
So it's my understanding that the shop building is gonna have a shop, and then there's all this extra empty room for sometime down the road, correct?
There is it's designed to have a metal shop and
Or what?
classroom.
Just one classroom
And
in the whole building?
it basically replicates the existing shop space and the existing classroom space now that's located back there.
Okay, I understood it would have even more. So what's the size?
82 by 82.
So, so half of it, the roof is gonna, it's a simple gable roof that will go over where the one side that's built out and the other side is just gonna be covered. And they're gonna utilize that for material storage and those sorts of things now. The design for expansion into a wood shop and another classroom is taken into consideration on how things are laid out now, but that won't be done at this point.
Well, the reason I was asking is because if you just built the whole thing, and what if that was used for classrooms instead of starting a whole new wing? That's, I mean, if you're looking at costs,
That's an administrative teacher, school district question.
So I did pose that question quite a while back, and the response was, we don't want to intermix grade schoolers and high schoolers.
So
it's not grade school, it's middle school.
So-
high school.
we can, when you're doing school design and you have different ages in the K-12, there are certain things that you need to consider when you hit middle school. And there's different theories on how you do that. It's a weird transitional age. Some kids are, that's when everybody changes. And some kids are a little bit above and some are a little bit behind. And sometimes weird things happen. And so from a design standpoint, those grades are best to have their own group.
I
in order
understand
to-
that. I
so-
just was wondering if that extra room is not gonna be developed, it's just covered, would house the classrooms for middle school, if that would even. I realize that, but I just wondered if that would be the same amount of square footage as what the new building, the new classrooms are going to be.
It would be a little too small.
Okay, that was what I wanted.
Yes.
What's gonna happen with the old shop space?
One turns into the cafeteria.
Is it converting it into a cafeteria?
So right now, there's no cafeteria in the school, so everybody knows. And the kitchen is a classroom. And so part of the overall plan was to have that be cafeteria, and where the boiler is where the kitchen would go. And part of the design approach of that was that it overlooks the football field. And it's a big space. And it would facilitate delivery of food because there's a drive up to the back of it. And all the kids could have lunch at the same time.
Would it be more cost effective to build a cafeteria and a kitchen? And make the shop like it is, or would it be more, it cost more to do a cafeteria and
The other portion of that is we're building a hallway that is basically where the relocatable is out there. There's no ADA accessible path from the existing school to the shop. There's no ramps, and so that hallway that we're doing there would have a ramp system, and it would interconnect the cafeteria into the main hallway of the existing school. So it would create a continuity. That was the part of the design approach for that. And so it just made sense. And again, from a design standpoint, I mean, if you've gone in there, it's a great space. From like an architectural.
Look, you're condensing prices, if you're trying to condense the price and stuff, wouldn't you be able to fit a kitchen and a cafeteria in that old shop, in the whole thing? That's a large space. And forget using the boiler room, use it for something else down the road, and just put the whole thing, kitchen, cafeteria together. It's way bigger than what there is now.
Yeah, because right now they don't have a cafeteria.
Well, I know, but there used to be, the cafeteria used to be inside with the kitchen. There used to be tables in there. And I know there's more kids, but you're talking different groups of kids eating at certain times. So with a kitchen and a cafeteria together in that whole big space, there would most likely be plenty of room for that. Probably cheaper to
So to answer
put
your
plumbing over.
To answer your question, yes, cafeteria sizes can be addressed through sequence lunches. So if you have a small cafeteria, you can have 3 lunch periods. So there is some things that you can do to address that. Questions?
Can I ask who developed this bond oversight committee scope of work and legal limitations paper?
If it has to do with spelling or grammatical errors.
No.
I did.
Okay, well, so I really appreciate this because I've been wondering what the scope is. But one thing I'm trying to understand is for all this things that the charge to the committee does not include, you know, I kind of would like to know who does get to approve, and not just like the school district, but titles or, you know, I just want to have an understanding.
I think a lot of that is the superintendent.
Okay,
And the school board.
and the school board?
I don't know the breakdown.
Yeah.
Ron and Mr. Gallagher would be more informed about that.
Superintendent.
Okay, so is this like the school district team, or, I mean, do you guys have a name or title or?
The 4 months to 2.
Scott, what have you seen in other school districts to answer your question?
Okay, so when you go through a programming exercise, you're trying to figure out what you need to do. It's really complicated. Okay? And you want to get the people involved in doing that have intimate knowledge of what they specifically do. So you want to involve, and usually the administration understands their staff. And they have an overall, overarching understanding of basically how the school will run. They've been tasked with, you know, taking care of the kids. And so they have that sort of knowledge. So usually they are the ones that say, okay, this is what we need, this is what we want. And then the design team comes in and goes, okay, I understand what your needs are and I understand what your wants are. Let me help to design something that will accommodate those things. And so oftentimes, once you get into that, you look, your architect will go through and they'll look and try to figure out, okay, well, if we do this or if we do that, that's how the design forms. And so you kind of have to have the right people that really have the intimate knowledge of how everything works in order to put the good information in, just fit the design out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so is our superintendent then the project manager?
Okay. So the project manager, there's all kinds, there's multiple terms here that I want to. Okay, so the architect is myself, and I'm the one that is in charge of the design and the plans. The project manager, it can either be there's an owner's rep sometimes. Okay. And for the project manager would be the CMGC, who oversees the project during construction. So I work for the school district. I figure out the design. I put the plans together. I give them to, and I'm simplifying here, give them to the contractor. The contractor figures out the needs and methods and what needs to happen in order to get what I've drawn built. I watch the contractor to make sure that they're building it the way that I designed it.
And you sign off on their payment, right?
And I sign off on their payment, and that is a That's done because keep everybody calm.
Right. Yeah.
Checks and balances.
So
Checks and
typically, I mean, I work for Corvallis School District and I pay the bond bills. And so what I see happening is a project management team that brings the construction managers and the architect and the district. The district gets to make all the approvals. But that's how I see it operating. And so I'm just wondering, like, who is the, because there's always somebody to go to ask a question. And so now I'm trying to understand, like, who's in charge of the project?
When you say approvals, what approving specifically what?
Like improving like package B. I mean, so, your phases, we're moving into the phase and like in Corvallis, they aren't going to be able to do what they wanted to do. And so, go ahead.
I think I know what you're asking. You're asking who the third-party construction manager is.
Yeah.
We don't have one. And my opinion is we don't have one because the size of the project doesn't necessarily warrant it. So the Corvallis school projects you're referring to, they're much larger than this one.
Right.
Magnitude's larger. And a project such as that needs that third-party element to manage the overall scope of the bond project. Because it is so large and the staff doesn't have access or knowledge to manage that large of a project. It's a big project for Alcee, big for Alcee, huge. But in terms of dollar amount to warrant that third party to come in and charge another 8 to 10% on top of that, it doesn't warrant that work here. So in terms of a third party project manager, it would be the four musketeers that would technically have that oversight of Scott and myself.
So you
So-
guys look at this as more as a design build project?
No.
No?
So I would say our staff probably are not experienced in design, build, all of this stuff. So do you provide all the legal oversight for like to make sure where the checks and, everything is, legal? I mean, obviously you do all the permitting and all of that, but just in general terms, I just want to feel
So-
confident that, we're doing what we need to do.
From a design side, the design of the system, the components, the structures here, the level of care they get are the same level of care that you would get at Corvallis. They're all designed by professionals, engineers, architects. And so the legalities, the code issues, all that stuff is met. So I guess back to your question about the construction manager, the technically is a third party. And to your question about design build, it's not technically design build. It's a CMDC where there is a design team that designs the project, and us, the contractor, help the design team massage that project into something that can fit within the budget. And this is an odd case where budget was up here originally, but construction costs are up here originally, budget is down here. This is the most out of balance one that I've been involved with. I think that was probably part of the earlier discussions for a variety of reasons.
So just for layman terms here, as a patron, if I have a concern, am I to go to somebody on this committee? Am I supposed to go to somebody at the school district? What is my appropriate chain to follow for questions, concerns, reporting of any of the above?
Will be our superintendent.
Yeah. So I would say it would be the superintendent first for the bond oversight committee. So you've got your superintendent bond oversight committee, your architect, your contractor, and information flows to that superintendent.
Did you say the superintendent of the bond oversight committee or superintendent and bond oversight committee?
I think-
misunderstood.
Ron,
Sean.
Sean, sorry.
Sean.
I think, okay, sorry. I think the superintendent of the school, from my understanding of the discussion so far, is probably the lead of the bond oversight committee. Yeah,
It would be me.
and it sounds like it's going to be much more.
Yeah.
Involved, but interactive, yeah,
Yes.
forthcoming with information.
Yes.
And so I think
So
your
I'm-
information would go to Sean. And then
Okay, so then as far as our bond oversight committee, since communication has been like nil, who are our current bond committee members? I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
My name's Thomas Lovely.
Ron,
And
Keenan,
So my opinion is that you should get, any question you have should get multiple sources.
Mhm.
Richard and Cheryl?
Yes.
I think everybody, I want everybody to be involved.
Right, but knowing the appropriate chains of command to follow allow us to act appropriately, respectfully to the process.
Right.
So,
Well, and Chris Burney. I don't know
Oh.
if he's online or not.
What'd you say, Cheryl?
Chris Burney.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. BOCs. Plus the super.
Earlier, you were referencing an owner's rep is typically what you would see in a kind of construction project. Who is it that is going to be signing off and doing all the inspections and making sure that things are actually done correctly? I mean, usually these projects, you get a list of things that need to be looked at or checked off or that aren't quite right. So who's doing the inspection process for this?
Me. I'm the one that put the documents together and the specifications and the drawings based on my understanding of what the school district needs. So I would be the ones that would be checking the contractor to what was done.
So Andy will be doing the punch list.
And is that terminology similar to what Pam was concerned in? She would be able to say, I think this needs looked at on a punch list.
Going back to the VOC question, so will this information be posted on the district's website by the superintendent and information from subsequent meetings? Is there a link there for the community to see that and to comment, and so that you all on the bond oversight committee can see those comments?
Yes, this meeting is being recorded. So we can put the video right up on the website if you guys want.
Are
Yeah.
Are future meetings public or closed?
I've never seen a bond oversight committee meeting that wasn't.
It's public dollars, so I believe it has to be public.
Okay,
I'm just going back to your point, and which is an excellent one, the communication and transparency. And if the superintendent bond oversight committee, if those contacts are on there for the community to be able to send questions to, it sounds like the superintendent's taking responsibility as a chairperson to get timely answers. You provide a lot of good information here. Just making sure that that's going to be on the website for people to be able to see, and it'll stay there so that historically people can watch this as it transpires.
I think that would be an excellent idea. It would make my job a lot easier.
how do you facilitate that?
So
You're out of questions.
I'm not. I'm not. Trust me.
I'm sorry, that comment.
So the bond committee, are we gonna get together and organize ourselves and make a group and a plan and, be like a normal board? Me too. When's that supposed to happen? I hope right away. Also, Mr. Superintendent, I'm sorry, Sean.
Hi, I'm Sean Gallagher.
Hi, I'm
I am
Cheryl Van Lee.
officially not the superintendent.
Not yet.
That's
I
why
know,
I've been
that'll
very
be going
quiet.
in. But I had I said, sorry, I came in as a whirlwind. It was not identified to me that our change of time, and this has been happening quite frequently. I thought it was supposed to be 6 o'clock. I apologize for being.
anyone who gets that impression is surely maintains an interested party to this. You'll get more information than you want, but you will get all of the information that you need.
But I'm surprised I didn't get it.
I did
got
not.
your email on the 8th.
The only email that I had for you was your Van Leuven construction email. That's all I had. I'm sorry.
It's interesting because you sent me all of these.
It was a long time ago and I don't think it was, I couldn't find it. The one I had was the wrong. It came back to me.
Well, and
I'm
if we're
sorry.
an official committee, we should probably have accurate contact, accurate
Yeah.
communication.
Exactly. But anyway, so
A way to get around it would be to establish the date for the next meeting now,
well, we did that.
and then everybody will know.
We did that in January.
And
And it was 6 o'clock.
if you post it on the district's website too, that's just a.
Okay, I was in the all day with
Maybe
a flat
you have
tire,
talent.
sorry. But here's my question, because Mark was the superintendent, he was the overseer, plus the CFO or CEO, whatever that guy that pays all the bills. He did everything. And I told him, don't you think that's a conflict of interest? Because he had his hands in the pie of disbursement. And he said, you know, it's okay, don't worry about it, et cetera, et cetera. And if I have any questions, come to his office. I will talk to you directly, make an appointment with Shirley. I ain't having that. And so I think there should be, I asked him, is there any legal representation on these fundings and stuff like that? Instead of it all being on the superintendent's shoulder, because you need to justify for this. And, you know, I think this is one of our biggest concerns is justification when it comes to public funding. So, you know, is that gonna happen?
I hear you. I'm
Thank
still-
you.
I'm pretty new right now.
Yeah.
So I'm still learning and listening. But I can tell you how I've been a superintendent in the past. I've always had a separate CFO. I've always had a separate business
Checks and
manager.
balances.
I've used auditors, I've used public perception, I've used public meetings. I believe in transparency. I really do.
Thank you.
And I think you'll find once I'm aboard that a lot of these concerns you have hopefully will be alleviated. And if they aren't, I really do want to hear from you. I
Okay,
really do.
All
And
right.
so, yes, I think communication is one of the things that we really need to step up on and make sure people do have the information. And I think these gentlemen are doing an excellent job of trying to explain, hey,
Right.
this has been an interesting process.
it has been, because I just don't think this has been just, you know, it's been shoved off, you know, I mean, like, it's just not really, when we had our meeting, I mean, I only been to one meeting, and I didn't really get involved into this whole thing until I got interested in August. And I started coming to the board meetings in September, and I've been at every board meeting since September, and there has been a lot of stuff that's gone on.
And so it is important to remember that we, as trying to get these projects done for you guys,
Yes.
whatever the budget is, we work towards that. Whatever happens from that point behind it, we don't, it's not us. It's not, you know what I'm saying? So when we're talking and we're having like these meetings today to talk about the bond, it has to do with projects, not necessarily all of things behind it.
We need to get our board together, people.
Maybe you could put yourself in charge of that.
Hey, I don't have a problem making sure that this is out there.
I really meant that as a helpful suggestion, like
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to take one to do it. And
Yeah.
yeah, everybody goes, oh, great, Cheryl did it.
I don't have,
You know what?
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, we'll do it.
We'll make our own meeting first. Get it organized.
So part of that bond meeting would be, would encompass myself and CB Construction. You guys have formal report for the projects are.
I think what we're talking about, or what Cheryl's talking about right now, is we just need to organize ourselves as a committee. So that we have a unified vision of how we want to go forward. So I don't think you need to worry about it.
And I think that goes back to what Scott's first comment was, that it works for the school district. So it's up to us to really give him and his team the criteria, what they're working in. It sounds like there's some things that need to be decided here. I've been through a lot of these types of projects. I'm very experienced with this. I look forward to working with not only you guys, but also these gentlemen right here. Yeah, again, we're all in a unique situation with all the reasons they talk about in terms of, the increased costs. I've never seen a 12% increase in costs in any of the projects I've been involved in. That is just wow. I think about gas prices right now.
Yeah. So
It all affects and it all does flow downhill when one thing changes and the next thing is changed and the next thing. So, there are a lot of extenuating circumstances for everybody that we're all involved in. But I hear you in terms of increased communication, transparency, those sorts of things. And I also hear that these gentlemen need some more direction. They need some defined direction. Budget being one big one.
That's the biggest one.
Okay, we got this for the bond, but what else can we, and I'm hearing priority of projects. Okay, here's our priority list. Who knows how far we can get to, because maybe as we're doing something, hey, we just saved 100,000, so that means we can do the next thing on the list. Yeah, I think we need to be looking at those things. Absolutely, and sooner than later, because you guys are about ready to get permitted and get going on this, and we only have so long for these funds to be expended.
I got one question. Do you think you guys are actually gonna find contractors quick enough? Yeah, I think we'll find the people to do the work. Yeah. They're not huge projects right by the stretch, and I know there's some local folks here that.
But they need to be commercial contractors.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they have to, I don't know of any commercial contractors out in this area, unless we're gonna bring them from Corvallis.
There is a route of working under our license to try and keep that money in the community if somebody's really interested in doing it.
But if they do that, then they have to up their non-exempt as being not commercial. They cannot do construction. They can only do a certain limited amount, but that's total all construction costs.
Yeah.
And we got how many million here? So they have to be a commercial contractor.
I mean, it'll be a challenge for sure. We just have to cross that bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, actually, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not official yet. If I was, then I would do it.
Did we come up with a date on that before for the next?
Are we doing every 2 months or just?
Can we do
Every
an
month,
organizational
month,
one in like
every
a
month.
week or two?
Yeah.
Or every week, every other week?
So can I make a suggestion? Considering we're going out for permits next week and bidding, it probably behooves the committee to meet within 2 weeks to go over that process and where we're at. Meet before bids go out.
And prioritize maybe
Yeah.
some of these plans.
I'm retired, so my schedule's open.
I'm retired too, I'm open.
All right.
I'm leaving, I'm gonna be gone for 2 weeks on the 23rd, so
What's
March.
the last day of school?
Let's make it next week.
18.
Of June?
Oh,
No. For the spring break.
Okay, what's the
Yeah.
last day?
Yeah.
What's the last day of actual school?
Summertime?
Of June? Okay, so technically we can't do some of this work until you're out for school, so we've got 3 months. So delaying the bidding process a week or two here on the front end to organize and get straight, things work fine. I mean, if we go out for bid and have bids due mid-April, that basically gives us 2 months until construction starts. And that's 2 months of time for things to happen. Either when prices or whatever.
Is that gonna be no time to get material?
Yeah, there's certainly some early procurement stuff that we want to go after. But if we get to a point where the lumber market softens, like we did in August, which was this month, might be a scenario where we say, hey, let's do a lumber package before it gets too crazy again. Electrical is a big one, that service. Like,
To be out months.
we've got a 1600 amp service in Baker's 52 weeks out.
Say we're 20, 30 weeks out on a lot of our stuff.
I'm sorry, I don't recognize you. Who are you at?
I work at LSU.
Oh, okay. Okay.
He's on Windows are 18 weeks out, overhead garage doors are 6 months out.
Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff.
Everything's just stupid.
Yeah, just.
That's why I was asking. I got my head like, put every day at current.
Yeah.
I have to go.
I can't even find
I
it
have
yet.
a hard stop.
Can't even find it yet.
Diabetic pet. Sean, I'll be in touch about the process.
Please, love to.